Are we having a party here? I don't know. Welcome to Polishing Profits. Join our 3 industry experts boasting 140 years of experience as they unlock building service contracting secrets that can revolutionize your business. Welcome to another jaw-dropping, earth-shattering episode of Polishing. Now, what am I supposed to call this now, Sharon?
Polishing Janitorial Profits.
Ed, do you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Polishing Janitorial Profits. And we have a special guest with us. Again, happy to have him back, John Voll. We will cut our usual banter, which everybody probably just fast forwards through anyway, and get right down to business with John here. John, thanks for joining us again. Excited to have you here as well. Why don't you give us a little bit about your background, and then we'll be ready. And John's going to talk about when you're ready to sell your business. What do you do? And we're going to talk about timing, thinking about it. When's a good time? Do you know when? Do you have a plan? There's all sorts of things. And John is more than qualified to do this. So, John, with that, I'm going to let you go through a short bio, and then the floor is all yours to take us away, okay?
All right, guys, it's just a real pleasure to have another opportunity to be on this podcast. I really always enjoy this. And I'm a business broker, and my mission that I really love is helping people move from the world of entrepreneurship to a successful retirement. And there's very few of us around. There's 3 million real estate agents like here in Florida, but there's really only 1,500 business brokers that are in the area. So I've always had a passion for small business. I've got an education in small business. We had a family-owned business I was involved in and started, sold them, and done a fair amount of consulting. So in the time I've got left in my career, I'm just spending time meeting with sellers and assisting them in exiting their business and hopefully, enjoy a successful retirement. So that's kind of my mission, and I enjoy it.
All right. Well, I'm going to let you grab hold of the wheel and introduce things and get us started.
Well, what I'm going to talk about today is something that I share with a lot of business owners which is most critical is when do you sell the business? How do you know when to prepare it, to value it, to promote it? And how do you know when to put this together? What's the timeline? Nobody really has that timeline. And, and selling your business could be a 6-week course. But I just want to touch on a few of the key points on a 60,000 foot view of what this is all about. First of all, let me set the stage. Everywhere you go, downtown, travel, here, there, you see businesses everywhere. For the most part, every one of those businesses was started with somebody with an idea, a skill set. They discovered a niche and they felt like, hey, I just want to get in my own business. I don't want to work for anybody else. And then, they'll either take their personal funds, they'll take a HELOC, they'll get an SBA loan, they'll borrow from family, and they take that risk to jump off the cliff to start a business. And their objective is, I want to get into this business and I want to make a living. I want to support my family. I want to buy the house, buy the boat, marry the kids off and, do all these things. And at the end of the line, after maybe 40 years of being in the business, I want to be able to retire comfortably by selling the business. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen that way. And there's a couple of reasons. Is the best time to sell your business is when you have a healthy business and 3 years of increasing revenue and income. This is what buyers want to see. They want to see a trend that's going up. They want to see income. They want to see success. That really is what's attractive to them. But what happens with the typical entrepreneur is, like I mentioned here on this chart, when you get up to this point, when the thing is growing, and all along here, boy, we're living, life is good. We're paying the bills. We're living right. We're making more money than the average person who's living, working for corporate America. But when you get up to this point, you're very successful. and you're doing that 3 years of increases in revenue and income, if you go to that owner, a lot of times they're going to say, why would I sell it now? I'm making really good money and I just can't see selling it now. I'm just going to wait another year. Well, then what happens is they run out of steam, they run out of energy, they don't have the get up and go that they used to have, and they start pulling back the throttle. And then the thing kind of turns into a cash cow, but the income and the performance start to go down. And then once it starts going down, once you make that curve and it starts going down, the perception of the buyers and everything changes and the perceived value goes down. And then they say, oh my God, this thing's getting to be a hassle. I'm working hard. I can't make any money. And we just ought to sell it. Well, at that point, the value could drop considerably. And a lot of people say, oh, let's get out of the lease. Let's auction off the inventory and just close the door. And that happens so much that you put all that 40 years and then all of a sudden at the end, you really don't have anything. And when you get to that point, so when you go back to it, you really should stop when that gets up towards the top and you should really start thinking, am I really having fun? Is this really something I enjoy doing every day? Do I have the energy to continue? And if you don't, you really gotta think about, do you want to keep this going or should you sell it now? So you're kind of in that Y in the road. And I remember Jack Welch, who was the CEO of General Electric years ago, a young student asked him, Jack, how do I know if I'm in the right career? How do I know if this is what I'm meant to be or where I should be? And they expected Jack to come back and say, well, it depends on your interest and your skill set and what do you like to do and what you take in school. And Jack came back, there's only one thing. When you get up in the morning, if you're looking forward to going to that job and you're excited about it, you're in the right niche. If you're not, then you might want to consider getting into something else. And I think this is the same with a business owner, because so many of them just hang in there and when they really don't enjoy it anymore, but maybe feel like they have to stay in there and charge away and then keep going. And what happens is you end up with, diminishing returns. And then then they end up fire selling it. And the other thing too is, and I hear this all the time, is what about your personal relationships? I mean, I wish I had a dime for everybody that I talked to that said, God, I wish I would have retired earlier. I didn't spend time at the kids', tennis deal or her ballet or something like that. I just had a meeting today with this company I told you about that's an auto dealer. When the guy's 53 years old, he says, I've been working for 40 years. My dog's home and I never get to see my dog. My dog's bleeding and all this. I just can't, I'm here retail all this time. And I just got to get out of this thing. And so, and I think you really got to think about that. How much time do you got left on this earth?
Right.
I mean, one person told me one time, if you take a marble for every month that your lifespan's going to be, and you take one out every month, then marbles go pretty quick. So
I got to tell you,
you know,
John, to piggyback on what you said, I think
Yes.
it's really what you said about the timing for selling your business. Back in 1990, when I bought my business, my CPA at the time told me there's going to come a point in time when you want to sell this. He said the best advice I can give you on day one of your purchase of this business is when it is peaking, that's when you sell. And I thought that's really strange advice to tell me when it's really doing the best ever that I should sell it. But he was absolutely spot on, and
Yep.
that's what I did. So that's good, solid advice from 30, 35, 40 years ago.
Yeah, and I hate to say it, in my own family business, we had a gray iron foundry business, and during the 70s, it just absolutely boomed. And we were in that situation. And I mean, I went to graduate school and I got an MBA and I did my thesis on the foundry industry. And I came back and told my dad, I said, with the way the Chinese are coming in and the way the market's getting split, I think we really have two choices. One is to sell it right now, or the other option is to be the best foundry in the country, but you can't, it's got to be one or the other. And again, you get caught in that, well, it's making a lot of money. And well, then, the rest of the story. The Chinese just came in and the stuff we were making for, $150, they're delivering it for 35 from China. So, but you're exactly right. I think you have to really look at what are the indicators that you see out there. But that is smart. And I think for that person to take that direction, I think all business owners should really sit down and at least have a tentative date they can think about. But most of them have been so involved in their business that this is not really anything that's on their radar screen,
All right.
So anyway, you get into this thing not only financially, but you get, the family, and you miss out on all these things. And then, these guys just can't quit. They end up getting sick and everything else. And I don't know of anybody on their deathbed that said, oh my God, I wish I spent another day at the office. And that's just something that you see all the time. The other thing, a lot of times there's a son or daughter that's in the business. And I see this quite often. They have a lot of interest, but mom or dad just can't turn over the reins. Nobody's going to be able to do it as well as I can. And what happens is this goes on, and then they get discouraged and leave. And that's really kind of an unfortunate thing. But one thing my dad did for me, which I thought was smart, because when you grow up, I'm thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to run the family business and be the president and all that kind of stuff. And I'm thinking about the business, not about the industry. So he said, what I want you guys to do, my brother and I, is you got to go out and get a job somewhere for a couple of years and see what happens and then come back into the business. Well, my brother was a natural for the foundry business because very engineering oriented. But for me, I left, I said, I could care less about pouring molds or drilling castings and all that. So it was good for me because it just wasn't a fit. And I think what that does, if that son or daughter come back, they're going to have some motivation for that business. So, but the main thing I think there is, if you're going to bring a son or daughter in, and again, that's something that I see it all the time, is nobody can do it as good as me because I'm the CEO and they get frustrated. So you really got to take that risk. Next thing, we talked a little bit about business valuations. And I run into a lot of companies that just have a lot of misconceptions about valuations. I've had people that say, well, I saw one listed for $350,000. It was a high-end woodworking business up here on the coast. And they had it for sale by owner. So I call them and I said, where'd you get the $350,000 price? And they said, well, my parents worked years here. And again, fed the family, bought a 4-bedroom house and a boat and everything else, put us through school. It's time for them to retire. And, $350 is probably what it's going to take for them to have a healthy retirement. Then I said, well, send the financials. And the financials showed like $50,000 or $75,000 in profit and about $50,000 in furniture, fixtures, and equipment. Well, that's just not going to work. And so what people got to understand is buyers buy a business for what it did, and they buy it with the expectation of what it's going to do. And to say, I know this is a great business and we generate all this furniture and it's got huge potential. It usually doesn't, buyers don't look at it that way. And what I do a lot of times, I'll say, you got to stop and say, would you buy your own business? And would you, if you were buying your own business, what would you want to know? Are you going to buy into the fact that it could have 30% growth next year? I think you guys, you got to get people to look at that. Are you willing to bet the farm on what of the price you want and the cash flow that it shows on the bottom line? And a lot of things that's, brings them kind of back to reality. As I mentioned before, the small businesses, a lot of the valuations are based on a multiple of cash flow. So what's coming in? What are the expenses? What's the net income? What did you write off? Depreciation, interest, add that back. And to put real simple, a buyer's looking for what is the owner benefit that the seller's getting that I could assume if I buy the business. However that's laid out, whether it's interest or benefits or insurance or any of those things. And then there's like usually a multiple of that where, you know, there's enough there for you to have a job, but also get a return on your investment. So that's that's what it is. And that figure is usually what drives the value. But the reality of most small businesses, and you guys know this, we're not going to declare the cash sales, and we're going to write off the vacation, and we're going to, you know, write this off, and, you know, and all these different expenses. And this is so widespread that I think sometimes people think the government's paying for this stuff. And maybe they are, but it's only like 30 cents on a dollar. And so, and I was thinking about this. At the end of the day, you as a business owner, you are actually paying for this stuff. It's coming out of your coffer. You're just not putting it through the system, and where you're going to get taxed by Uncle Sam for whatever that number is. But at the at the end of the day, every dollar that you don't declare, you might save 30 cents. But if you kept that dollar in the business, you could gain anywhere from $1 to $3 for that dollar. And a lot of times people don't realize that when it comes to valuing the business, you got to have that number there, or it's going to be one of these Where's Waldo. Somebody's going to come in and you're going to tell them it's making all this money, but how do you prove it? And
Right.
so that's something that it's so common. But when you're looking to retire, not only are you driving down the value of the business, but you're also driving down your income because you don't want to pay taxes. Then you're not paying FICA, and then your Social Security benefits are, are dropping. So then at the end of the day, after 40 years, you retire. The business isn't worth anything, and you're making minimal Social Security. And this is what happens a lot of times. And then on top of it, if the business loses value, all they really get out of the business is the asset value, kind of at an auction. So that's is really an issue that I think that business owners really got to step back and think about that. And the bone of contention I got with CPA firms, and you guys know this, at least the ones that I know of, or a lot of them, their main mission is so you don't pay taxes. And so in the short term, you don't pay taxes, but in the long term, what impact is that going to have? How many times, I went to my CPA and I don't have to pay anything and this and that. And, I showed no income and et cetera. So, but I think that's a real red flag for people, especially if you want to retire. And now, if you are in that situation where you're written everything off and you're not making any money and everything else, if you go to sell it, there's really nothing there. However, there is a solution. I tell people all the time, you need to take 2 years and play it straight. Put the money in the till, don't write off everything, and build that income up. And a lot of times with as little as 1 year and 2 years, you'll get the attraction of a buyer because they're going to see a track record that's going to go like this. But it's going to take a couple of years to get you there. And so you got to look at you stay a couple of years and hustle to get it back where you want it, or you just close the door. But a lot of them don't know exactly what to do. And like we've all talked before, there's nobody really teaching, there's a few consultants like you guys, and we go around and teach business 101. But when I got my real estate license and I got my health license, man, they put you through all kinds of training on the good, bad, and what's going on in that industry. So play it straight for a couple of years and build your bottom line. But I think kind of a little bit of a summary on this part of it is you really have to just set an arbitrary date And even if you got 20 years you want to work, just think in terms of that 20 years. What do you have to do to get there? How do I make sure I got 3 years of tax return or 3 years of increasing revenue and income so I can maximize the value? How do I not write all this stuff off and just run a good, clean business? Because most buyers, they want to see 3 years of clean tax returns. And they all say to me, well, I got this, but, look in this drawer over here. I had a convenience store. The guy wanted $3 million for it, but he showed a loss. I said, how do I show this? He said, come here, John, and opened up the drawer, and it's full of cash. There's dollars and everything else. And he had a convenience store, a laundry, and a car wash. So that's it's a license to steal.
Yeah. Two very high cash businesses, the laundromat and the car wash.
Yeah.
They're all coins.
Yeah. And I heard as long as you got somebody that can repair the washers, it's a gold mine. And you just go in there and empty the coins and you're off to the races. So, but
John,
anyway, have some serious.
John, I have a quick question. One of the things that I heard early on, many years ago, was that a buyer will always pay more money when the business is turnkey and they don't have a mess to clean up and they don't have a lot of discrepancies, that they will pay top dollar to be able to walk in and start collecting their money and run the business. Have you found that to be?
I mean, absolutely. It's almost like buying a home that's just perfect. It looks good. And, you might get multiple offers on it because it looks like quality, but you're exactly right. If you go into a business and it's clean, ready to go, then they see it as being turnkey and you can go right in and pick up from there. You don't have the investment of cleaning this up and the books are bad or the place looks like hell or you got to paint it. You're exactly right. Because, we all got to put ourselves in that shoe. What would we rather have if we're going to buy a business? If there's one thing that's squeaky clean and the machines and everything work, it definitely will bring a premium.
Yeah.
Hey, John, I think a couple of your points, you got me thinking about, I have my business for 40 years, so I went through all kinds of cycles, okay? Mm-hmm. But at about year 10, as we started to grow, I got a good piece of advice. Now, we were a C Corp, okay?
Yeah.
So was have clean books, have them reviewed annually, and don't treat it like your piggy bank. So when it came to, we kept very clean books. We acted like a regular, we didn't buy country club memberships or the Mercedes or the boats. Yeah. We paid ourselves. And if you wanted that stuff, you bought it. And when the day came, they did a 6-year look back on us on growth and everything. Yep. And it was a major corporation. They did a 6-year look back. Now they took the late three. So you got 3 and then 3 to 6. They looked at that, but they wanted to see the whole picture. And it took them 5 months going through the business to ask all the questions. Yeah. And they really looked. Now, again, my business in today's dollars was at 15 million. So it wasn't a laundromat or anything. Same with these guys. But I think that's the best piece of advice I had was keep it clean and have your books reviewed. And I walked in with books that had been reviewed for, 25 years. Now, they didn't look back that far, but we always had a third party. We did not pay for an audit, but we did do a CPA review. And I think that put us in a good position that, hey, these things are pretty clean.
That's a great point because if they went back to 4 and 5 and you were playing the game and all that, they would have a different perception and the price wouldn't be the same. And I would just about guarantee that anything you benefited from by buying the Mercedes and joining the club was way overweighed by the value that you lost. So, but that's...
Well, we got top multiple on our EBITDA.
That's great. That is great. Yeah, it just makes so much sense. And when you go in and everything's clean, it's just it's a lot more fun to sell it. And, when I run into a whole lot of cases where, they want to sell at the end, but you just waste so much time with that because the buyer comes in and where's the financials? And the seller says, well, I did this and I'm making money here or there, but, how do you prove it? And it's not worth messing with it. And I've done enough of those that just doesn't pencil out,
Ed, did
But
you have your hand up there, buddy?
Yeah, there was one thing that I wanted to drop in here. One of the things I tell my people is, look, particularly, I mean, in the cleaning business, this is not the end of the world, okay? You might only be practicing, okay? I went through a series of businesses, sold them, okay? And after the first one, I didn't get emotionally involved. So I tell people, do not fall in love with your business because
amen.
I mean, look, it's just about the money. It's just about the money,
Yep.
At the end of the day, we're all whores. Okay. We're just in it for the money. So,
That is so true because, I developed this widget and I fine tuned it and I got it approved and it's my baby, but your baby ain't going to pay the mortgage the whole, forever. And, that's a great point, Ed, because, a lot of people do that and their name's on the door.
well, but here's the deal. The first one is whatever, so or horrible or wonderful or whatever. Okay. But the second one's a little bit better.
Yeah.
And the third one's a little bit better. Okay. And I hit it out of the park on the fourth one.
Really?
It was the fourth. Yeah, it was the fourth one that I hit it out of the park.
Did you change your strategy or did you make adjustments in how you presented it? And,
The one difference was the day I started that fourth company, I knew that it was going to be sold. There was it was just, a straight line. We're going to do this and that's where we're going,
So your mindset said this is going to fly, and now it's just fill in the blanks to get there.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, when you start going through them and you do enough of them, it comes out pretty good. You can put out a nice organization.
No, that's
I've
good.
read
And
that
you can.
too. Day one is the day that you start planning your sale that you're going to sell.
Yeah.
Day one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that how you consult with your clients? The same thing, or are they not ready for that? Or
For me, I got to play it by ear and figure out who's who, because I deal with some tremendously talented, really bright people. Okay. And for them, it's really a different path than somebody that's just, like barely hanging on and making a living. And they're probably not going to go very far, So, I mean, you kind of approach each situation a little bit differently because people are different. What I love to tell the story about somebody I know here. And it's a fellow that goes out and gets a whole bunch of once a week accounts. Okay. That he cleans on the weekend. And what he does Friday afternoon, he piles a bunch of people into a van. Okay. They run around and they do all of these once a week accounts.
Yeah.
And that's because what he wants to do is he wants to sit on the beach drunk the whole rest of the week. Okay. And chase tourists, chase the girls that are coming down for a vacation. You know what I mean? Look, this guy is happy as a clam.
Does it work?
This is not what I would have wanted. I mean, I had 3 kids to put through private school. So my objective was a little bit different than his. But he was just as happy as can be. And everybody wants something different here.
Yeah.
Everybody's looking for something different.
No, you're right. Yeah. So basically that's kind of the front end is are you really motivated? Are you really motivated physically, mentally, and, financially ready to do it? And you have a healthy business and you have those 3 years of increasing revenue and income. So that's definitely a good start. But in selling your business, I don't think people realize, what all goes into this. A lot of people think it's kind of like selling real estate. But, and you guys know this, I mean, confidentiality is so critical. I run into so many real estate agents around here that got these $5 million restaurants with a sign in front. And, or they post it on the MLS. And, I just can't imagine the damage it is are you going to eat someplace that's for sale? What are your, customers going to think? What are your vendors going to think? What's that going to do to the value of the business? So, confidentiality is just about as important as anything. And then you got to market it. A lot of businesses around here, they put it on Craigslist and they also put it on the MLS. So here you have this business with its name on the MLS. Then you got, when you do get buyers, you got to pre-screen them. And,
Yeah.
it's one thing to pre-screen for real estate. And I think you guys know that, but who's got the money, And everybody's like, well, once grandpa dies, I'm going to pick up the downstroke. And a lot of times when they're selling it by themselves, they'll tie it up because somebody says, I've got the money. Well, then you got it all tied up, and then it ends up they don't have the money. So,
Right.
and I think these are things where a good business broker can walk somebody through this, because when you try to sell these things on your own, there's just so many, pitfalls.
Broker's worth every penny. A good broker is worth every penny.
I'd second that, Ed. John, I went through the first stage. I thought, well, I've run this thing for 40 years. I can certainly sell it. And it took me several offers and several different people to realize I'm way in over my head as far as selling this thing. And I went to a company out here in the Northwest. It was M&As. They specialized in B2B service, commercial service business. And I got an education almost over the next 9 months as they prepped my business to go to market. 9 months. They went through all those books, everything we did, how we did it, wrote the story, and they had about a 10-page prospectus to present, and they knew who they were going to based on what we wanted to achieve. And then 2008 came and the whole thing fell apart, and I had to wait another 4 years. Surprise.
But there's so much to it. And then, you finally get a buyer, and then you really want to do the offer and negotiation between the owner and the buyer, and you really need a third party in that. That's a mess. A lot of times owner financing's involved. Well, I mean, obviously the seller wants all cash and the buyer wants all credit, and there's got to be sometimes a middle road there. So somebody's got to negotiate that. Then you got SBA and commercial loans. And what a lot of people don't understand, nobody's going to write a check for these businesses, and commercial banks aren't going to lend money. So that you got to get creative, and that takes somebody that can really put a deal together. And then once you got all that done, then you got the contingencies. It's contingent on a lease. It's contingent on all the equipment working. It's contingent on the value of the inventory, and make adjustments if that's necessary. And then you got to be a counselor and a psychiatrist and keep this one happy and that one happy. And it's a trip. And so it's not easy. And, it could take, depending on the size of the business, like you said, Mark, it could take 24 months to get to the closing table. And it's not something that happens overnight. So, business brokers, I think, are really a valuable tool to, to make this happen. Because most people that try to sell it on themselves, it's obviously a lot worse than trying to sell real estate by yourself. But that's just a quick overview, that some things for people to think about when selling a business. It's not just coming in and filling out a contract and advertising it and getting offers. There's a lot of things in it. There's psychological things and preparing it and the whole 9 yards. So,
the only way it would get to that as we close up here would be as if your business is so small and all you're doing is basically selling the revenue stream to somebody. In other words, I've got 20 accounts. I'm doing $40,000 a month. I want this many months, and nobody looks into anything, and they look at that. The business is run. I basically call those the simple sales or the solo entrepreneur stuff.
Exactly.
Somebody's basically buying a job to get away from whatever else they're doing. And there's a lot of those folks that might be listening here that aren't, having. That is great, John.
We get a lot of those in Florida. The snowbirds coming down, they want to retire from something up north and they want to buy a job. And that's what they do. They buy a job.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
Well, friend of mine that's a broker said, look, it's 5 degrees. There's a foot of snow on the ground. And there's guys sitting up with his feet up on the desk, reading the Wall Street Journal, trying to figure out how to get into a business down here in Florida.
Yeah. I mean, there's 1,000 people I hear moving down here every day. And I mean, if I had the chance up there, and I lived in Indiana and North Dakota and all those places, if I could figure out a way to get business and live down here, like I am now, I said I'd jump all over that,
Sure.
So
the last thing is that there are always more buyers than there are good businesses.
Yes.
Big time. And if you're going to get in this business, list the business and the buyers will follow. There's no question. Trying to
Yeah.
go out and get buyers, it's just, you will find buyers if you got a good business. You know?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just a matter of, like we talked about, kissing a lot of frogs to get one
Mhm.
that's a cream puff.
Yeah. Wow, that was great, John. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much for
John.
joining us.
Thanks,
And
John.
we will
All right,
definitely
thank you,
see
guys.
you again. All
Okay,
right.
I appreciate it. Bye.